Folks, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show here. It's already been a pretty epic day, and get a chance to talk to an incredible human being and a pretty good musician in his own right. Buzzy Feiten, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Jake, it's a total honor to be here.
You know, I wanted you to talk to the audience about an example of when Philip Wilson and Gene Dinwiddie showed their generosity to you, as from a musical point of view, also from a humanitarian point of view, and like helped you because they knew you didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the first act of generosity actually was to accept a white suburban punk into, this group of incredibly accomplished, avant-garde jazz musicians. Those guys, Dinwiddie and Philip Wilson, were both from the Art Ensemble of Chicago. And it was my first experience with black people, first of all.
It was your first experience with black people?
Yeah, there were no black people in Long Island. I mean, there was three blacks in my high school of 700.
What town was it?
In Centerport, Long Island.
3 blacks? 3 blacks?
3 blacks and 700. So it wasn't like a
melting
racially
pot.
Balanced situation, So, I was completely terrified, to be honest with you. I'd been introduced, to blues and stuff like that, earlier in high school, but got deeper into it when I first started going to college in Manhattan. There were some guys, especially in college, who were deep off into the blues and introduced me to a whole bunch of stuff that I'd never heard of, like B.B. King Live at the Regal and Howlin' Wolf and Muddy and, sort of all that kind of stuff. And, I got deep off into the Butterfield band too. I started, I was playing French horn, going to college playing French horn.
French horn,
time. Yeah.
Not bass.
No. Well, I was playing bass on the side, but I was studying French horn.
Bass wasn't considered an instrument you could study at that time.
Well, I just wasn't, I was kind of coerced into going to classical, to a conservatory by my parents who, let me know that they would be extremely disappointed in me if I didn't pursue a career in classical music. So I did that just to please my parents, but I was not into it, So, about a year and a half into it, I bagged it. I just said, I can't do this anymore, and quit. And, I think I might have told you this story a couple times, but anyway, I ended up auditioning, actually jamming with the Butterfield band, essentially, but the Butterfield band plus B.B. King plus Jimi Hendrix plus Al Cooper. on stage with me playing bass, and so that led to an audition with me playing guitar for Butterfield, and I ended up getting hired. And I honestly believe at this point it had nothing to do with my playing, or as much to do with my playing, because there was 30 guitar players, all of whom were better than me. Every last one of them was better than me. But I was really cocky, and I was so stupid and so cocky and so arrogant that I think that's the attitude they were looking for, more so even than the playing so much. I don't think they were looking for chops or looking for technique or looking for musicianship so much as they were just looking for a kind of an attitude more than anything else. And I think, that arrogance got me the gig, but it also, at some point you have to deliver the goods as far as being able to, fit into a band situation. And those guys, the generosity they showed me was in not kicking me out of the band, first of all, because I didn't know how to play rhythm. So that was the first act of generosity. But that being said, I do remember, drumsticks flying by my ear, play, and the drummers.
Was it because you were wanking it and they were like?
Well, I was just soloing through everything. That's what you did. It was like dynamic. What do you mean dynamics? I'm playing as loud as I can. It's like, that's kind of what it was.
Right.
It's like, well, if you pick up a guitar, you solo. That's what you do with it, So, the drummer used to yell at me often and say, "Play rhythm, motherfucker," and he'd throw a drumstick at me.
Phil Wilson would do that?
Yeah. So Gene Dinwiddie took a softer approach. He would, he didn't say much, but he kind of showed me how to play rhythm by, like, whenever we would jam, which was often, Dinwiddie would grab a tambourine, and he had the first of all the softest, most understated approach to playing rhythm on the tambourine that you could believe. And there was something that the pocket was so deep and his groove was so intense that I learned more about playing rhythm from his tambourine playing than almost anything else in my early musical.
I just want to be clear though, it was not loud.
No.
It was
just
the
opposite.
The intensity.
It was almost, you could barely hear it at first, but it was just the way he played, with the dynamics he used. It was all about the dynamics in the tambourine groove. It'd be like some beats were loud, some beats were soft, some beats were ghosted. He took me to school by demonstration.
Right. The drumsticks weren't flying, but
the drumsticks weren't flying, but he was letting me know, hey man, take your foot off the gas for a minute. It doesn't have to be 95 miles an hour, man. You can start out at 30. So anyway.
No, I mean, I think it's.
And the same with his playing. The same with his sax playing was like the same thing.
Right.
He didn't immediately try to kill you, with.
It was a build-up. There was a build.
It was a build-up. He would just build. He would build stuff. He'd build stuff. He would speak. He would have a conversation on the instrument. He would tell a story on the instrument, and that's something I learned, from those guys, that you have to tell a story. That any good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Buzz, but can we get a little more light?
Yeah,
here?
sure.
I want this little bit. I want people to see your face. This is a beautiful studio here, just building apparatuses, repairing apparatuses.
Yeah, let me see if this helps.
No, that's perfect. That's all we need. Yeah, I just don't want you to be in the dark.
Yeah, well,
it's fine.
Sure.
Totally fine. This is switching gears. I just want you to give a message to people, philanthropists, people that have more money than they know what to do with, and they love.
That's hilarious.
Well, no, it's true. I mean, there's a lot of
preamble.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cats with like houses with they have Legos and they don't never even touch the house is full.
And they don't know what to do with themselves. Yeah.
But that being said, they love good music.
Yeah.
What is your message to them about if for live music and good music to sustain? Can you talk a little bit about people that need to ante up now in order to create those regional pockets of music again?
Well, I mean, I don't know what people need to do.
No, I just want you to riff on that. You told me this. It was very impassioned. I liked it.
Well, I just believe that. I mean, it's not a belief. It's kind of how I've lived my life. I believe that artists are providing an absolutely essential value. They provide incredible value to the quality of life of human beings, and back in the 1600s, artists were subsidized. They were, I don't know what the word is, patronized. They had patrons. And the patrons would either be the church, in the case of Bach, or, Mozart, the royal court, in the case of Mozart. And, artists were Michelangelo or Da Vinci or whatever those people were that painted those ceilings and all that stuff. They were patronized. They didn't have to worry so much about being the manager and the social network expert and the accountant and the promo guy and the road manager and the driver and the artist and the writer. They didn't have to wear all those hats like they do today. Like if musicians want to survive today, they have to wear all those hats. And
there's no guarantee they're going to get paid.
And so. Serious artists that have something to say musically, and I really don't know who decides that, but they deserve support, I believe. I believe that people that are contributing to the value of human life, deserve
the sustainability.
They deserve to be sustained. It's just that's just normal. But that's just me. That's what I believe. I believe that art and music especially is incredibly valuable in a way that we don't often articulate or acknowledge. That it does something for your soul. It does something for people's soul. It's funny, I just turned 70, and I got this absolutely outpouring from people that it shocked me how many people stepped up and said, "Hey, man, thank you for so many years of giving me joy and giving me, and it touched me. It really did. It made me so grateful that at this point in my life, I can look back and say, hey, you know what? I don't know what else I did. I didn't become a millionaire, but I touched a lot of people over the years."
Dude, that is the.
So that's something I can
That's
take.
dharma and karma.
That's something I feel like I got that. I have that. I earned that. And that's something that it transcends money. It transcends power and prestige. It transcends all that. It's one guy sending me a message saying, "You touched my heart. You made my life better." And I got a lot of those. So it made me feel good. It really did. Because you go through, as a struggling musician or struggling luthier or whatever struggle you're currently engaged in, you go through those dips where you think, what the hell am I doing this for? This is just too hard. And nobody cares. There's that voice that says, nobody cares about this shit. And then you realize that, yes, they do. Yes, they do care, and so it meant a lot to me. It really did. It meant a lot to me that people got it. That there are people out there that get it. Like you're one of them. You get it. You get it when there's some real.
Well, but you also told me in a very. You told me that in fact I'm teaching people that they can lead their own lives and be themselves, and that's okay too. You don't have to live in this cookie cutter kind of.
Right.
Live by your own rules. It's more fun that way. That's what you said.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Jake, that's not a choice I made. That wasn't a choice I made. That was something I was driven to do.
Wow.
And I'm not sure why that is, but that's just something I was driven to do. I'm driven to do that for myself, and I figured if I can channel that obsession into to live a magical life, to live a life that's that makes that important, that makes magic, you know, that or striving, always striving for magic, either through music or through making a guitar that allows someone else to make magic. That's the deal. That's the deal, because it's like for me, because those are the moments, you know, that you those are the things you really take with you. You can't take money with you, you can't take your cars or your stuff with you, but you take that with you because it fills up your soul, and that soul becomes a fuller, a richer soul.
Well, people are having a ball. Keep the comments coming in. I feel the presence of Mr. Hendrix, and I was hoping you could maybe just play something in honor of him, whatever you felt like playing.
Wow. I don't know. That's a tall order, man. I don't know.
I know, but you used to play with him and Billy Cox and those guys.
Well,
amps. Nobody could hear themselves. Right. You know. No, that was just fine, man. Buzzy Feiten. You know, I wanted you to talk a little bit about, like, there's a difference. You know, you can talk about time. You know, 4/4 time or 5/4 time, and then there's the feel. How you want it to feel. Mm-hmm. And John McLaughlin was a big influence on you, and a lot of people wouldn't understand how funky he was. I mean, he was a real funky player.
Oh my God! Let me grab my coffee, Jake.
Yeah, go ahead. We're here in Buzz's studio here, but I wanted you to talk a little bit about, you know, sometimes people will say that a lot of straight ahead jazz, beautiful players, amazing players, they say that his time feel was so different. It was so. Demiola could be accused of the same thing. I mean, it was just it was not on the beat, but it was his own style.
Right.
And I want you, because that really got you into jazz, right? I mean, McLaughlin got you into jazz.
Oh, definitely. I mean, not completely, but it really he influenced me a lot because he first of all, he had the harmonic knowledge. He had the chordal knowledge. He knew, you know, he knew what he was doing with chords. You know, he knew how to, he knew which chords to play, and he had this, I think, instinct for what Miles wanted. And that's the thing, you know, he had this instinct that Miles didn't want some polished, like bebop stuff.
No.
Miles, at that point, he was going for something.
You're talking about Bitches Brew.
Yeah, something completely different. And to be honest, that was my first exposure to John McLaughlin. I'd never heard of him. So when I heard the stuff he was doing rhythmically, you know, it was like he was playing like these mini horn parts almost. You know, he was just rocking out on, you know, the rhythm parts on that song. Pharaoh's Dance and, you know, some of the other songs on that record really caught my attention because it's like, wow, that guy, he's putting it somewhere else. But it rocked so hard, you know, there was so much going on in that band. There was like, I don't know, 15 keyboards or however many people there were on stage or on that record. And he knew how to stay out of the way and make a statement. You know, he knew how to make a rhythmic statement.
Right. That's absolutely it's about making a statement.
Right.
You know, and when you and Purdy and Rainey were in this Cooking the Groove, I'm always fascinated, like David T. Walker. I'm not sure if you ever got
Sure.
to, he worked a lot with Gene Page for Barry White. And, you know, Gene Page would just give them chord changes. Right. Like very simple chord changes. And then he'd tell Ed Green, he's like, just kind of make it, you know, you hum out a groove or whatever. But it was so organic. Right. When you were first in the studio with Bernard and Chuck, like, were the producers, did they kind of just let you create as an artist? As an accompanist, not necessarily as the leader, but if you were as the rhythm section, how sparse was the
there wasn't a lot of direction ever with, you know, the good producers anyway.
You name a couple that you got off on?
Well, I mean, there were producers like Jerry Ragavoy that were very, they were more specific, but even he, you know, he was specific, especially with the horn parts. But as far as the production part, he let people do their thing. Most people did there, unless it was, unless it was a big date where it was all charted out, and those weren't my dates. That wasn't what I got hired to do.
What did you get hired to do? Play funky, really funky music.
Well, that was part of it. Yeah.
But I mean, like with Purdy and Rainey, were you guys just cooking? Like, is there ever a time where like you just, you know, came up? Because I mean, that Gadsden was making up beats for Withers. It was organic, you know. Mm-hmm. But I mean, when you were in the studio, was there? Do you remember times where there was nothing there and it was left to your own devices, or the artist was just allowed you guys to really build the song?
Yeah, sure. There was a lot of freedom.
See, I think that we talked about before about the.
Well, you know, it all came from guys like I mean, Chuck Rainey and Purdy and Gordon Edwards.
The man.
You know, people like that. They played together so much, first of all, that there was just like these like almost standard things that they would, you know, play that were just, you know, with very little modification became, you know,
it just cooked.
Yeah, it just felt great.
How does that work?
Like Chuck Rainey, like
I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, he's just so badass. You know, the groove is so cool that you know, it's hard to separate who was more in the pocket. You know, Rainey or Purdy. Or, you know, they were locked. There was just like one thing. Right. And so that's what, you know. That's what became.
They were an opposing duo. I'm trying to think. Gordon Edwards told me. I think it was the rivalry doo-wop bands was Gordon's band and Purdy's band.
Yeah.
That was so they were just going up against each other all the time.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested, like, when you got in those for jingles, or I mean, like, would you let them start to cook and then you'd start to
Yeah, it was a lot of that.
This is great. Oh man.
Yeah, it was a lot of that. And then like I mean, I can give you an example.
Please.
I'll give you an example. This is with, I think it was with Gadd.
With Steve Gadd.
Yeah, I think it was, if I remember, it was Ricky Lee. It was a Ricky Lee day, but where Willie Weeks started playing. And it was after a lunch break. We're trying
That was the bass line. That was the bass line.
Song, that Youngblood, song Youngblood. We came back from lunch and suddenly Willie Weeks starts playing. Because we've been struggling with trying to find a groove, and he was just fucking around. It wasn't even for that song.
Oh, so you had, prior to lunch, you had tried to work it out, but you were stumbling.
Yeah, right. Ate lunch, and Willie just sat down, except he was. So I just jumped in and started playing, It just fit with. All right. It just seemed like the right thing to play against that. And suddenly Russ Titleman comes running out of the control and says, that's it. That's it. So that's how that's an example of the kind of interaction that would go on and that would result in stuff, that would end up being tracks for things, because the bass player would have a line and an idea and somebody else would jump in with another idea and, so that's kind of.
I want you to for cats in 50 years when we're gone, or I mean when we're
when we're working on the next 150, right?
Right. Well, in whatever life form we come back in, you told me your philosophy was that it should be that you enjoy the sound that's coming out of your apparatus.
Yes.
Before technique.
Yo, totally.
And I think that. I'm not saying, I just think the tempo of society has changed so much, the pressure of society, the lack of venues to play in for musicians, that technique and chops has become like this huge obsession.
Sure.
And I did you take your own advice? Did you learn to love the sound on your guitar before you started to really build your vocabulary?
Yes. I mean, yes and no. I mean, finding a sound is an evolution. It's a process. It's not something that suddenly gets handed down to you or delivered to you in a whole form. You find a little of this and a little of that, and you subtract this and add that, and it's kind of a building block thing. And then you suddenly go, wow, that's it. That's and then you found your voice. Then you found.
How many blocks?
I'm sorry?
How many blocks? You said building blocks. How many blocks?
It's a whole thing. It's like you start with the guitar, you find the right strings for that guitar, and you find the right pickups for that guitar, and then you find the right. And every once in a while you get lucky, and there it is. It's just perfect the way it is, which happens sometimes, but most of the time with every guitar player I know, they change something, just because everybody has personal preferences and what makes them happy. And and then you start to when I started playing, when it was just a guitar and a chord and an amp, and,
right?
And luckily back in those days, the amps that people didn't own their own amps in New York. The people that did session work in New York.
The unions brought them in, or what?
No, they were owned by a group called the Manhattan Guitar Club.
This is unbelievable. Really?
Which was. And they were stamped on the side. They were Ampeg reverb rockets and Geminis. And they were stamped on the side, Manhattan Guitar Club. And instead of an off-on switch, they had a key. And the second engineers in all the studios would have the key to these amps, right? So you learned early on that the way to work in New York was you made sure you brought a couple extra joints, and you gave one to the second engineer, and he'd unlock the amp for you.
This is what I. This is
and
what
they
I.
were all owned by Vinnie Bell, because Vinnie Bell,
The guitarist.
yeah, the guitarist
Yeah.
Bell that designed the Coil Electric sitar. He was the first guy to use effects.
Really?
Yeah, he had a pedal board.
Barry
Nobody
Galbraith. Barry Galbraith. No.
Well, I didn't know.
I'm kidding. I'm fucking around. No, Vinnie Bell effects.
Vinnie Bell.
First one.
Yeah, as far as I know, he was the first guy that had effects. Like he had some kind of echo, and he had a wah-wah pedal, and all this like exotic stuff. So when people, like he worked a lot, especially doing jingles, because he had effects, right? But I remember that Vinnie Bell was one of the members of the Manhattan Guitar Club. And anyway, but I was a newbie, so I didn't have that. So I had to bribe the second engineer to unlock the amp for me, and they sounded great. They all sounded great. Just plug it into them with a cord. And now those amps are in, like serious demand. They get a lot of money for those things. But back then they were just kind of like, part of the furniture.
Well, you just popped into my head. What does it say about our culture that the technology is massively expensive, but yet the ability to monetize or quantify a musician's gift to the world is impossible? I mean, you're talking about amps that are worth thousands, or
right.
and it's you just crystallized it where it was clearly, well, not here, but we talk off air about Germany and France and those countries that pay clubs.
They subsidize.
They keep them in business and they pay the musicians.
Yeah, it's because they view jazz especially and blues as an art form that has value, that has cultural value, and is deserving of funding. And we don't feel that way here in the United States. United States, everybody has to hustle has to hustle on their own. They have to be their own marketing person, and they have to have their own social media program for marketing themselves, their own YouTube channel, their own this, their own that. The various governments, Italy, France, Germany, and so on, they subsidize these jazz clubs so that the club can afford to fly the bands, the artists over, and because they realize or they believe that this art form has value for the culture. And so that's why you see so many jazz artists either living in Europe or moving to Europe or working in Europe all the time, because that's where the money is. That they value it like they do in Japan. Japan is the same thing. They value good music more than we do. They appreciate good music. They understand. First of all, they're educated better than we are, so that they know who the good artists are. And
I think that education starts with just having a more open mind as well.
Well, yeah.
Like bigger ears, but
Well, they read. They're educated. They read. They know who the players are.
Or they feel. They can feel. They're encouraged to feel.
Right.
And I think that ultimately, I talked to Joe Porcaro today, the father of the late great Jeffrey Porcaro.
Well, Joe is also a lot of these drummers' teachers.
He's a badass.
Yeah.
The guy, we did a historic interview today, but he did talk about overcoming the loss of his son. And in your musical career, can you talk about a time when you faced a lot of adversity and how you overcame it, how it made you a stronger person?
Well, to be honest with you, a lot of the adversity that I faced in my career was self-created. I shot myself in the foot more than once, and
could you share an example?
Well, there was a lot of events, but like most people, most musicians, especially during that period, the drug use was just, it went with the territory,
And people were dying.
Between you and me, Jeff Porcaro, that was it was not publicly stated, but he died of a heart attack as a result of a cocaine overdose.
I'm really happy to hear that, because for a long time, like, the story was that he somehow got allergic reaction to something.
A weed killer or something, yeah.
Right. In fact, that's still peddled on the streets.
Well, it may be peddled on the streets, but
okay,
everybody knows what happened.
But anybody would agree. Michael Shreve, who's tuning in, he would say that he saw his friends being roadkill, and that the point was that he realized, if I'm going to survive, I have to get off hard drugs.
Yeah, well, everybody, me too. I realized I'd rather, I had to make a decision. I had to, I really had to ask for help, is what it was, because I didn't, it's partly a decision, but it's also, when you realize that you're, that this drug addiction and the aftermath of that, I mean, they're dropping like flies, all these wonderful artists just left and right, opioid overdoses and all that. And
not just musicians too, a lot of actors and
yeah, but the bottom line is that talent, or whatever talent God gives you, often, there's often a tortured soul there that is kind of wrestling with their own demons, along with the talent, because the drive that the drive to create, it's kind of like the evil twin that goes along with the drive to create, that this drive to self-destruct. And sometimes I think the more talented, the more driven to self-destruction. And it's really, that's a hard one to reconcile. And I think, at some point you have to just say, okay, I want to live more than I want to get high. Because at some point, the wheels will fall off. They will fall off. It's inevitable. And, and in some ways I'm lucky that I was such a maniac, because, the wheels wouldn't stay on very long.
I just would love to catch a hang with you back, in that maniac time, dude. I mean, you feel...
I was miserable. That's the bottom line. I was just miserable.
And we're not going to go into it, but it was, because there was that legendary Greg Allman laid-back session, that whole trip to Macon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I woke
just
up in a hotel
benders.
I had no idea what city I was in. All I knew is that I had a tattoo that I didn't recall, and I was in a hotel. I had to call the front desk to find out what city I was in. So, that lifestyle... it sounds romantic when you tell the story, but it was incredibly sad and pathetic, actually. And and
you look back on it now as pathetic.
And I see, I saw people, big stars and big names and people with humongous careers making tons of money. They were just miserable. They were just pathetic messes, and. And I was right there with them, So, but I knew it on some level. I wasn't delusional, that delusional. I knew that this was really wrong, and that it was a waste of life. So, thank God I was able to, get enough help to change that and kind of flip it around.
But even through the darkness, the phone never stopped ringing for gigs. I mean, was there a point in the studio scene when the industry got so the racket, as Johnny Vodakovich likes to call it, the racket, when it got so small that did you actually just stop going? When did the studio really slow down? Because you came out here and did a whole bunch. We've never even vetted your West Coast stuff. It's like we've only stayed in the East Coast. But was there a discernible time when that you could point to when it was like it wasn't from sunset to dawn, kind of,
Well, everybody had a little bit of a different experience, but
that's right.
Because I was never like a. One session to another kind of player. I wasn't that kind of didn't work that way. There were guys in town that would go from one date to another, mostly film dates, a lot of film and TV dates, and they would just do 2, 3, 4 dates a day.
You're talking about California now.
Yeah, but it was mostly film and TV because that was the center of this, and also record dates. But for me, things started to kind of dry up late 90s, early 2000, 2001, 2002. There wasn't as much studio work, and part of it was, when people started stealing music, pirating CDs, and when that whole Napster thing and
right,
yeah,
you stopped going.
Gutted. I remember specifically. I remember like being in some management offices and some label offices where people that I had been dealing with for many years, they just had this look on their face and they were talking like it's over. And these are people like at A&M and big labels.
Heart attacks.
Over. It's like
wow.
like Black Friday. People jumping out to Wall Street. It had that vibe, and from then on in, every time I was in one of those situations, it felt like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It's like we're going down.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
That's when I realized, like, people that I'd always looked up to as being like really successful, the happening business guys. They were like, I wonder if it's too late for real estate. They're making flip houses. It's like that's when I realized that it really was over, because when music's free, then there's no floor there anymore because it's all free, and that's the problem I have with a lot of the current or this attitude that has sort of evolved, especially among younger people, that music should be free somehow, that they're just entitled to whatever music they want, and that they don't have to ever pay for it. And,
consumers of music.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing is that I believe that too. I think music should all be free, and I think the government should pay the musicians and the artists. Right. That's what I believe. I believe our government should subsidize artists and pay them to create, and then it should be free for everybody. Like the Sistine Chapel. Anybody can go into the Sistine Chapel and look at the ceiling. But the government, the church paid the guy. Or Mozart, anyone could enjoy that music because he was paid, he was supported, he was nurtured, he was supported in creating the art, so he didn't have to worry about being his own promo guy. So I believe that that serious artists deserve the support of people who can afford to subsidize them and who enjoy their output, enjoy their creations. So that's what I believe, and it's probably incredibly naive and incredibly delusional, but that is how I feel.
But you did you play with Alice Coltrane?
I did.
Can you talk about that?
On the Rascals record.
My favorite record.
Yeah, that was a great record. It really was.
But Alice was in playing harp, and can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was just.
Did you see Coltrane live ever?
No, I never saw Coltrane live. That was a little.
You were Feiten jazz right there.
Before my time.
So, I mean, did you pull? Because when Felix and I were talking, he said that they just pull Hubert Laws off. It was Atlantic, right? So you could just grab anybody there. And but with Alice, how can you talk about that experience?
To be honest, I don't remember being in the studio watching her play, but I do remember meeting her in the studio, and she just had this incredible this peaceful aura about her. She was like a very highly spiritual person, and you got that. You got that from her. And a lot of the people around Felix were that way, and he was such a gentle spiritual soul, Felix. And he attracted that. I think he attracted players and people like that.
You did spend some time in Woodstock.
I did.
And just can you give an idea of playing like Butter you guys would play a gig at the Joyous Lake, and then maybe you roll back to Jimmy's house and play with Billy Cox. Like, can you just paint a picture of an ideal night in Woodstock at that time?
Well,
For Buzz Feiten.
there was a lot of ideal nights, and honestly, that was a big education too, because I was playing a lot with Neil Larson back then, and
Badass.
yeah, the guys. We had a steady gig at the Joyous Lake.
You did?
Yeah, we had a steady gig.
Who was the rhythm section?
It would change, but often it was Philip Wilson and.
Oh my God!
And
Where are the
Dinwiddie.
tapes of this stuff?
I don't know, but there was a lot of
Oh,
that.
that's great.
And I remember, like, the rule was that you would just start playing. Nobody would define anything, like define a key
So
or a
great.
tempo or
So
anything.
great.
So the song would evolve from tuning up. You play an E and then a B, and then somebody would create a melody around that E and B, and it would just kind of morph into something. And that's where I learned, and that was like a rule. That was like, we all agreed that there were no rules, that we were going to just follow wherever the spirit kind of took us. And that's how you develop radar. That's how you develop communication with other players. That's how you develop it, is by listening. And a lot of people don't understand that. A lot of players think it's about playing. It's only half about playing. It's the other half is about listening. And that's the part that when you really understand that, or when you really when your listening is as developed as you're playing, that's when everyone is like that, then you develop these magical things happen. Magic happens from that, and that's what Miles understood. He understood that the space is more important than the note. He understood that it was more important than the note. And, so that, anyway, that I learned how to listen from that. That's what inspires you as a player.
Well, because when you're listening, you're not playing.
When you're listening,
or you're playing rhythm, or
you open yourself up. You open yourself up to the group, to the collective unconscious. That's what happens. That's when magic happens in music. And the funny thing is, Jake, is that it's never captured on tape. It cannot be, because I believe that that's a gift to God, and the very best of that, something will always go wrong with the tape recorder, or somebody will pull the cord out of the wall by accident, or somebody will trip over the camera.
Yeah, I did.
And that is just what happens, because those moments that that define you, that define your life, like, oh my God, nothing will ever be as great as that night, and somebody tripped over the cord on the tape recorder, and there's no recording of it. Of course not, because it's a gift to God. That doesn't belong to you.
Right.
So that's what taught me about that the magic comes from the collective unconscious. It doesn't come from one person's ego. It comes from the collective unconscious, where a bunch of people that are really skillful and really articulate on their instruments, if they're following that ether, if everyone's tuned into that ether, that unconscious thing, that's God, in my opinion. That is God. That's God speaking through everybody. And that's why, in my opinion, it can never be recorded, because it's an offering. It should be an offering to Him. So anyway, that's just my rave. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely spot on. And you played with the Shaman Cats. Did Miles and Jimmy ever get together and play?
I don't know. No idea.
If Jimmy, what is his legacy that is never recognized by pop culture?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Jimmy's been written about and.
But you knew him very well.
Yeah.
I mean,
I didn't know him very well. I did not know him very well. I played with him once or twice, and but he was incredibly reclusive. I never had a conversation with him really. We sat down and played together, but.
Is that where you learned about this? What you just riffed on before, the idea of magic?
No, I didn't really learn it from Hendrix. Hendrix knew about that. I think Hendrix came from a little bit of a different place. He was a more ego-driven, guy, and rightfully so. He needed to be, and he was just unique. Really, he was unique. He was driven in a different way to express something personally that he needed to express, and it was just so perfect. It was so.
And that's where the ego came in, though. There was his. Yeah, I dig.
Right, but it was every bit as valuable and as magical as the collective thing. It wasn't about that for him. It was more about, I think, that he had this this vision of himself. He had this vision of himself that he had to project, and it was in like complete conflict with who he was as a person. And I think that's why he self-destructed. He was not comfortable with himself. He could not be with himself, personally. He couldn't be anything other than that vision that he was, because if he wasn't, he was just, I don't know how to describe it, but he was like, he was painfully shy. He was terribly uncomfortable with himself. Just as a person. You know what I mean? He wasn't comfortable sitting down and say, "How are you doing? What did you have for dinner?" He couldn't do that.
He couldn't do what Jake Feinberg's doing right now.
Yeah,
The only place he felt comfortable was on the bandstand.
Yeah, or being Jimi Hendrix. He couldn't be just a guy. He couldn't just be a person, and it wasn't like that. He was also driven to live a magical life, I think, but in a different way.
And a shooting star too.
Yeah, a very bright, brief kind of comet, But
did you wind up on any? Can you talk about the bills? Like I know that at the Isle of Wight, Tiny Tim preceded Dave Holland and Dave Holland was in the band at that time. What was the strangest? Did you ever play the Fillmore West with Butterfield? Can you talk a little bit about some of the bills?
Oh yeah, of course.
With Malo, or did you want it with Latin bands on there?
Yeah, I mean, we played one time with the Electric Flag with Mike Bloomfield.
Harvey Brooks.
Yeah, Harvey Brooks.
Buddy Miles.
And we played with.
But that's not that. Go ahead, Santana.
Carlos, yeah, his band.
Was Shreve in that? Shreve was drumming at that?
Yeah, Shreve was drumming, and we opened for them a lot. I remember we played the Santa Monica Civic with the Grateful Dead.
Butter opened for the Dead?
Yeah, Butter opened for the Dead.
Oh, that is great. I remember
it was that was when I ruined my hearing. I walked by the PA. Yeah, really. No, that night was when I fucked up the hearing in one of my ears.
Really?
Yeah, that night. I was walking by the PA speaker when Jerry Garcia started a solo. And
it blew your eardrum.
First of all, the Dead was known for they had these brilliant electronic engineers.
Owsley,
Owsley and all these guys that make these humongous PAs and their guitar amps and all this. And, it was just,
the wall of sound, yeah.
It was just that first note, I remember my head warped. The inside of my head warped. It went like that. It was so loud. And the top, 6K was just cut off from that point forward. So that's why my left, I don't have good hearing in my left ear.
Final question for you, my friend, before I let you go. What are you still learning about yourself today, and how do you bring love to the world?
Oh man, that's a deep question. Well, I think I learned a little bit. I think one of the things I'm learning about myself is that the more I let go of fear in all its various forms, the happier I am. And letting go of fear, for me, is learning to trust God. And that's the hardest thing to do sometimes, because you want to protect yourself and you want to, if you don't know the future, if it's all if you don't know what's going to happen and you're insecure and you're afraid, then that's the time that you have to have faith in the unseen. You have to have faith in God, that God is going to provide you exactly what you need. And that's a lesson that I learn every day, more and more. And the older I get, the more I trust it. The more I trust it. That God has never so far dropped me on my head. And that every once in a while, fear wants to creep back in there, But, and it's probably because I'm stubborn, so I just have to continually learn to trust God, that if I follow what He wants me to do, and not come from an ego place. Don't come from more attention, more for me. That place. If I come from a place of really trying to give something to either another person or to the world or to whatever, if I really try to do it for that reason, to do something good in the world, not to get more for buzz. If I come from that place, every time I get rewarded in a way that I could never predict.
Have no expectation based on your actions. Don't expect anything in return. Just do good.
No, that's not it. It's not having no expectations. It's having the expectation. It's the opposite. It's knowing on some deep level that God's going to make it work out. If I let go of that fear, but to expect good. Don't expect bad. Just expect good. Yeah, just expect it. It's going to happen. As long as you're not trying to control it or control others or manipulate or...
You're just talking about a huge segment of the population, but
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I dig, man.
Like if I come at you,
I did.
And I'm thinking about what you got in your pocket, or how much money I can borrow from you, or what I can, how some kind of get over on you. That's in any form.
How I can play you.
In any form, how I can play you. Then it's all about me, and I'm the one that suffers. If I come at you with, hey Jake, what can I give you today, man? How can I make your day a better day? Then I get rewarded like so much more than, So I'm just learning that every day. Like the less it's about me, and what I get, the happier I am.
Well, listen, you made my day, but as we close, can you play something in honor of Wes Montgomery?
Oh, I don't know about that, man. Really.
Play what you want to play, but Buzz Feiten, thank you for taking the time, man.
Hey, Jake, you're a prince, man.
Yeah, man. Much love to you, brother. Good night from LA. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you later.